did want to go back to stuff about water shortage because there was a time where I was kind of looking into it a lot, and if it has to do with like climate and the fact that we're not getting as much rain as we used to.
Completely, yes, entirely. The drought that Corpus Christi is in right now has become, not resolutely, but it sure looks like it, the worst drought on record for the region. And there's all kinds of problems with that. And the patterns that we see are totally consistent with what we would expect from climate change. You know, a series of gradually deepening droughts, longer periods without rain, extreme heat drying up the reservoirs. Now, the problem is that in Texas, our water planning uses the 1950s drought as the worst case scenario. We call this the drought of record. In other words, the worst drought on record of Texas. So now our plans use that as the worst case scenario. We're designed to get us through another drought like that. The 1950s drought is not the worst on record for Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi set a new drought of record in the 1960s, and in the 1990s, and in the 2010s, and now again in the 2020s. So you can see there the contracting lengths of time. This is basically exactly what we were supposed to expect, and we see that no preparation has been done in Texas to confront this very serious situation. In fact, going back through the years and decades, you can see our political leaders scoffing at these projections and willfully refusing to incorporate them into planning, and this is now the result.
Mm-hmm. So it really just seems like a lot of it has to do with all these like political leaders not really focusing on the different parts of Texas and the fact that we're all just kind of lumping everything of it into one instead of by region, which is like, as we talked in the beginning, how the water sources are so different throughout the state. And so
kind of going to what our podcast is about, which is the midterms. So have you seen in the last year or, just since the presidential elections, have you seen any actionable things being done by the Texas legislature? I know the 89th legislative session was last year. So was there any policies of note that were positive? Were there any that were overwhelmingly negative, in your opinion?
Well, the big one was the Texas Water Fund that they created last year. I think it's $20 billion over 20 years. So $1 billion per year for 20 years to fund water infrastructure development.
Is that good?
That is good-ish, but it's not that significant because the last water plan that released put the cost for our long-term water needs at $174 billion. So we're throwing $20 billion at a $174 billion problem. It's not going to get us very far. And then, when you talk about negative effects on the water supply, I couldn't tell you anything in particular, but I can tell you that the whole philosophy of the Texas government is this open to business thing, the Texas miracle. Growth is the point, and all of this is embracing the idea of growing water demand. We don't like to talk about constraints on demand because this means constraints on growth, and that is anti-Texan. So everything that we've done to try to bring more business here, to try to bring these giant industrial facilities, that because it has not been coupled with realistic or competent water planning, has been destructive to our water supply. And while it's brought us a lot of money, it might ultimately end up being the destruction of everyone.
Right, because, if there is no water, then those companies are kind of...
Then everyone's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to have to move out.
Yeah, because that also made me remember how another thing that I was looking at is how, like, Texas, we're just getting a lot more people moving here and a lot more growth. And lots of these, like, places where residents are coming in, they just don't have enough water to supply for the growing amount of residents. So I'm like...
Especially with, like, the suburbs, as you said, like, the grass is not native and it's all powered by drinking water. And so... And
like I said, the lawn irrigation is the main water use for people. People don't use that much water by themselves. Like, more than half the water people use goes onto their lawns. That's really the big thing. Yeah, because some people, in my neighborhood, people leave their sprinklers on overnight until the water is just trickling down the street, draining out. And turf grass has shallow roots, so it's not getting deeply absorbed stuff. And that's treated drinking water, or that's aquifer water that's just running down the streets. And everybody sees it, and everybody just treats it as regular. So what I'm saying is when these subdivisions come in, yeah, this is growing, and this is growing our water needs, but it's for silly stuff. If that philosophy were changed, we could have a lot more people here.
Going back to politicians in the midterms, are there any politicians who are running or candidates who are running that you kind of think are promising, or who are even like bringing up the environment or the water supply in Texas?
Well, as a journalist, I'm not here to endorse any politicians, but I will tell you in general, a lot of talk, not a lot of specific proposals, really. A lot of people will be out here saying we need to protect our water, not a lot of them getting into the nitty-gritty of what that actually means. There's a guy running for Ag Commissioner, Clayton Tucker, I've seen, who has made water a key part of his campaign, and especially limiting water contracts for data centers. So, that's a reasonable step, but quite a small one.
Right.
And also, under our regulatory framework, not exactly implementable. There's no real way to do that. We have a business philosophy, not only here, but in the whole country, where no one really has the right to deny you water. That water, if you buy the land and everything, you don't have to apply and be considered to get a plumbing connection, just like if you have property and you want an electrical connection, the electric company can't say the hell with you, we're not connecting you. No, everybody who has money to buy water can get water. So within that framework, it's pretty hard to imagine what we're going to do. The Democratic candidate for governor, Gina Hinojosa, has been critical of Republican-led water management, but at the same time is not really proposing her own water policies.
And that's why we wanted to focus on environment as well, because I don't think that's something people consider. And I think that's really, really important, especially for the Texas elections, because the environment is a very big issue that we have to deal with every year in the winter, every year in the summer.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't really know that much about it. I think the most basic things that people know is going to be climate change, and that they know a little bit that there's the water crisis going on, because that's just, I think, most articles or most headlines that people see are talking about there being a water crisis, but not really understanding all the nitty-gritty stuff, and there's just not a lot of knowledge that people know about it. And so politicians aren't really, I feel going to talk a lot about it or really get into it. So Clayton Tucker just meant talking about data centers when you mentioned how they don't really take up that much, but even Texas having a lot more data centers. So maybe there's some links to it all, but just not enough of what we actually need.
And I think the whole concept of environment is becoming outdated. We're going to have to develop our vocabulary here. Because if you think about, you said environment's so big. Let's think about this word environment, what this means. What is the environment like in your house? What's the environment like here in this library, or in this room? When we say it like that, environment means everything, literally everything that surrounds you, the whole vibe, basically. So when we talk about the environment, we're talking about everything, the air, the water, the land, the soil. That's quite big, and that, by itself. There's no just one environmental policy. So water, I think, was not seriously considered. It was lumped under environment, which was maybe seen as some kind of hippie sort of thing, not a serious concern for business issues. And now we're seeing it come front and center. Now we have the financial people at the Wall Street Journal who are interested in water and environment all of a sudden because it's threatening the underpinnings of our monetary system and things like that. So, while a political candidate might not get a lot of traction talking about save the environment, preserve our critical water resources, that's a different thing. What makes that environmental, you know? Because it exists in the physical reality of nature. Emissions, pollution, you know, cancer, asthma. I mean, there's more specific language to all of these things that gets down to what we're actually talking about. Public health, maybe, in many cases. In some cases, we're talking about the long-term viability of our society. Or in the case of Corpus Christi, the near-term viability.
Right.
So, you know, these things have been kicked down the road for a long time. Like I said, you go and broke gradually. We're not really talking about this because there's still more road down there. But now we're getting to the end of the road. And we're going to have to start talking about it and reconsidering what this whole environmental problem really is.
We're from North Texas, which has really hard water, and like hard water has genuinely detrimental impacts for your body, like, and no one really knows about it because it's really painted as this like science-y, like non-human type of subject, right? And so I think that's really, really important, and that's why we wanted to like really hyper focus on water.
Yeah.
Well, and what it's going to come down to is money in the end, which everybody cares about. Because if you have hard water and, you know, maybe there's a lot of dissolved solids in this water, which makes it hard, over time it's probably going to get harder. What's the solution to this? Reverse osmosis treatment systems, which are very expensive. And everybody is then going to end up paying a higher price for water forever. And water is at the basis of everything, you know? What do you need to live? Food and water. And the food needs water. The water doesn't need anything. So water is underpinning everything. And when those costs go up, costs of living go up. And when costs of living go up, everybody is poorer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I'm feeling like really empowered, and I think that I want other people to feel the same way, where we probably need to get our like representatives to kind of focus more and like talk more about these real concerns.
It might be too late, but you know, it's how can people take steps to better the situation that we're in right now?
Reducing water demand. And in Corpus Christi, reducing industrial water demand. Does anybody have the spine to do that? Because, it's a bold move to get up there and be the one. Like, if this were a movie, this guy would be played by, like, Tom Cruise or George Clooney, who comes in and just, like, kicks down the door and tells everybody what they have to do. Tells the big fat cats, you're done, you're cut, you know? I don't know.
Unfortunately, this is Texas, so...
Well, do you have any other things that you want to, like, really make note of, let the people know about?
Not really. I think we covered all of it. Just for you guys, I would say what can you do is educate yourselves and be confident in what you know. Don't feel like your elected leaders know more than you and that you're ignorant, because that's a feeling a lot of people have, that they don't understand what's going on, so they think those people must understand, and we'll leave it to them because poor us, we're just, you know, ignorant on the outside. Maybe the reality is that nobody understands what's going on and they need you to help them understand it, and that you can actually be a constructive force in this by bringing your insight as young people to the table, to the conversation, helping other people understand this, because the people in power in many cases are just reading the news. I'll tell you that. There's no more secret to it. They have the same information that you do, and they might be just as smart as you or less.
I think that's a great way to end this.
Yeah. But I think this is it's a unique end where it doesn't end on a good note, because we're not on a good note in general in Texas. We're on a very, very bad note. But thank you so much for joining us today on a very fun and low-key depressing conversation.
Yes.
And well, join us next time on the dinner table.